here in Recife, in Brazil, in your native country. I am foreigner right now, and I shortly want to introduce Professor Regina Mendes from Rio de Janeiro State University, Federal University, as I understood.
No,
just state, Rio de Janeiro State University, and I hope that we are going to have a short communication with Regina about different relevant issues, obviously related to education, and I just want to inform our channel viewers also that this communication is taking place here in Recife. Again, I want to repeat it, in Brazil. Today we have 28th of July, and here in Recife, 20th IOST International Symposium on Science and Technology Education is taking place, and we, both of us, Regina and me, are participants of this symposium, and after work day we decided to have a short communication with Regina. And it's really nice to meet you and to shortly discuss. Also, please introduce yourself in more details.
Thank you, Vincentas. I'm a professor at the University of the State of Rio de Janeiro. And I do classes for students, undergraduate students. Okay, undergraduate students in a biology course of teachers, for teachers, teachers training, and I do lessons about the practice of teaching biology in schools and how we could teach ecology in schools.
Oh, it's quite interesting. It's very interesting because, as we discussed possibly yesterday or before yesterday, that somehow our interests or field of research of interests are the same, because I'm somehow also graduated as chemist and biology teacher, and then connected with biology education as you. It's interesting. And we discussed obviously before shortly about your university, that is Rio de Janeiro State University, not Federal University. Yeah? Can you shortly explain the difference between state and federal universities?
Federal universities are maintained for federal government. The Ministry of Education.
Ministry of Education. Yeah. And for example, does it involve only financial, let's say, component, or
financial and component?
For example, curriculum or study programs, some regulations.
No, the regulations. There are many types of regulations. Mm-hmm. There are curriculum curriculum established for professors that are federal.
Okay.
And in the states and in local governments, we have to follow. And each state has your curriculum regulations too.
Right, means regulated by state, at state level.
Yeah.
Okay.
The secretaries of education that are different of the Ministry of Education.
Okay, but for example, just for interest, because currently we are in state of Pernambuco,
Okay.
and you are from state of Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
And for example, having in mind the regulations at state level, is it different among states in Brazil?
Yes, it's different. The major curriculum is, as for schools or as for professors, the major curriculum is federal. this moment we have BNCC. That was a new base. It's a national base for curriculum studies, and we have to follow this BNCC at federal levels and at state levels. So inside the states, the teachers in schools have to follow the curriculum established in the states. So we have one in Pernambuco that is different that we have in Rio de Janeiro.
Okay, it's quite interesting. And again, turning back to your university, how big is it? Because this is so interesting question. Maybe again, I should mention before that in Lithuania, for example, a few years ago, it was like a new reform to make universities bigger. The meaning was to reduce number of universities, because some of them, according to government, was so-called small universities or small-scale universities. For example, let's say with 1,000 or 2,000 students only, despite that, for example, some particular universities was like regional, for example, regional university, and not obviously all, but some universities were matched together into some bigger universities, or became as a branch, structural component of bigger university. For example, it was the case with our Šiauliai University. 2 years ago, our university became as academy, a structural part of Vilnius University, National Vilnius University. And how big is university? Rio de Janeiro State University.
So, Rio de Janeiro State University, that we call UERJ, was founded at the end of 60s. And UERJ has too many too many locals spread off the state of the Rio.
It's split in our whole territory.
Yes,
State.
whole territory.
Yeah.
In my unit, that was situated in São Gonçalo, the city, we have 3,000 of students. 3,000 students circling per day.
Wow.
Yes. There are 6 courses of teachers training. 6. One of them is for biology teachers. So I don't know exactly how much units the web has, but if you think that 3,000 people are in my unit and there are, I don't know, 6 or 7 different units, but the major unit is in Maracanã neighborhood in Rio de Janeiro, and there the number of students is a large, I don't know, 10,000 maybe. So it's a huge university.
I can imagine, because generally Brazil is a big country, large population, and obviously a lot of students. And for example, what about about let's say, quality or prestige of university? As we discussed, for example, because I visited at least twice some universities, particularly University in São Paulo University, and for example Federal University of ABC in Santo André. I was was also twice. And what about prestige? How students think, for example? Is it okay to study at your university, for example, Rio de Janeiro State University, or it would be better to go somewhere to another university?
No, it's very important to students, mainly because UERJ, the State University of Rio de Janeiro, was the first university in Brazil to establish a political for poor people that we call cotas, política de cotas, that establish a reservation of places to students that are with poor conditions. So it's very important to study at UERJ, my university. And the last ranking I saw put UERJ on the 70 best university in the world.
Among 70 in the world. For the world ranking?
The seventh place.
Okay. And if we would compare, for example, because we discussed with some colleagues also previously about private universities, because you have in Brazil obviously some private, too many private universities, and typically, for example, let's say not only Lithuania but in Europe, for example, somehow situation in different countries is different, for example, but I am not going to mention particular countries, but generally private universities, let's say, higher ranking based on prestige, because, and in some countries not, it's opposite. For example, so-called public universities, as your university, Rio de Janeiro University, as far as I know, is public university, not private one, and private universities are valued, let's say, not in not so good position. And in some countries, in opposite, private universities on the top.
No, here in Brazil, public universities are on top. With a section of PUC, that is a university that is presented in many states of Brazil that are maintained for priests, for Catholic priests.
And let's return back shortly to your research area. Obviously, you mentioned about biology education area, and but biology education is quite large. We know it.
Yes.
It includes
science education.
Yeah, and can you shortly give to us more detailed picture about your interest, in particular, related to biology education?
Oh, okay. In my researches, I'd like to work with environmental education issues inside biology education. But when I'm working with students that are in schools, learning how to teach, they can do researches about any one topic of biology education. I'm interested personally in ecology teaching, but we can do researches with microbiology, biophysics, zoology, botany. It's an area with
And let's connect with teacher education. You mentioned that some programs are preparing biology teachers, right? Possible chemistry teachers, physics teachers or not?
When we are talking about science education, it can be possible, but normally they are prepared for teachers that are lessoning in fundamental, in Brazil we call fundamental level, that is students with from 10 years, no, from 7 years to 14, 13, 14. When prepared teachers to lesson science to this level.
Does it mean primary school teacher or for example,
no.
subject teacher?
No, it's...
because if 7-year-old students...
Elementary teachers.
Yeah, it's like elementary or primary school teacher or elementary school teacher, because starting generally from 7, 8 or 6, 7-year-olds still...
Yes, you have mixed it. Primary teachers to 6 to 10, and elementary teachers to 10 to 13 and 14.
Okay. And is it common, for example, because in Lithuania currently it's important, and before also it was important. For example, my personal experience, as I mentioned, I graduated as chemist and biology teacher. It was the idea to combine at least 2 subjects at school, because, for example, in smaller schools, it's not enough for a teacher, or particular teacher, to have full workload. No, not enough lessons, for example, only chemistry or only biology. And the idea it was to combine to teach 2 subjects, for example, chemistry and biology. And it means, for example, that let's say in basic school or so-called lower secondary level, somewhere in the region, you can combine your workload having 2 subjects. And is it common, for example, in your country, in Brazil, despite that it's a big country and possible some differences exist, but in general, for example, only, for example, chemistry or biology teacher, or do you have some combination as chemistry and biology teacher?
No. The lessons are solitary, are individual, for individual teachers, and projects that do a unit with 2, 3, 4 teachers are specials, and too few schools, and normally the schools that are private that do it.
And teaching profession, again, let's continue, because it's quite important in nowadays, not only prestige of teaching profession. Teaching profession, is it popular? Is it prestigious?
No.
As for example, in some other countries, you know, I can mention,
Yes.
South Korea or Japan or some Scandinavian countries like Finland, for example.
Let me, before do a correction. Biology teachers or no, science teachers, they teach biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, and geology all together at the primary level and elementary level. No, primary level until 10 years. After we in schools we have separated disciplines, okay? And for adolescents, for teenagers, the same thing, separated disciplines.
like in the individual subject, for example, chemistry, physics, etc. And okay, in this regard, what about STEM education or STEAM education, like integrated version, including science, technology, art, mathematics, like, because I found one recently one paper, is STEAM common or popular or entering Brazil?
No, it's not common. Not common. Maybe some schools, some private schools are using this name, but it's not useful in Brazil.
Oh, but it's interesting because at least in Europe, it's let's say so large movement, STEAM education or STEM education. It's, let's say, every day.
Yeah.
Different projects are under progress at different universities, in comprehensive schools at this level, and for example, at our, as I mentioned, academy, we have a STEAM center, and this center is also responsible like regional center, and students from region can visit this center to work in labs. I think maybe not possible exactly, but at least six different labs are in this center, in this STEAM center, and teachers, students can work in this center to improve their skills, knowledge. Teachers is really good professional development, etc., etc. With STEAM education, STEAM movement, it's let's say on the top. I am surprised that in Brazil it's not the case.
Yeah, because in Brazil we have another way of look for the knowing, and things that are in the curriculum, the official curriculum, are many times very different than what happens in classrooms. So I think that teachers do things that seems like STEM projects, but we don't call STEM because the curriculum is not with STEM, it's with BNCC. And BNCC does some contents just disappear of the curriculum. So botany, for example, doesn't exist anymore for teenagers. So if the good thing in Brazil is that, and going to your answer, to your question, teaching profession is not with value since the 50 years of 20th century. But still in Brazil, teachers have autonomy in the classrooms, inside the classrooms.
And how this autonomy is expressed, for example, in reality?
We can close your door and do things that you consider important things. So work with projects, for example, with a colleague of physics, of chemistry, of math. It's more difficult, but history, geography, it's more common. You can manage the curriculum inside the school. You can build a curriculum practice that it's not exactly what is written in the official curriculum.
Okay, let's say I understand your approach, what you're saying, but how to follow, let's say, common rules or common program or common curriculum. For example, again, in my country we have, I would say, we have also somehow, at some extent, teachers' autonomy and school autonomy. But on the other hand, we have also a national so-called general program, general curricula, and based on general curricula, schools can prepare something own curricula, including, for example, or reflecting some, let's say, regional component. This is important. Maybe for smaller countries, maybe not so important. But for example, as Brazil, it's so different, so different regions, different contexts, etc., etc. Obviously, it's important to have autonomy, not to strictly follow, for example, a centralized approach. Yeah, but how to assure, for example, equal level in this regard, in this case. For example, one school can act in one way, another school in another way, in another state, for example, in your state, one approach, in Pernambuco schools, different approach. How to assure level, standardization, some state standards?
The standardization is done by the control, the various tests of control that are made it for the separate Ministry of Education. But the way how teachers in each state manage this content is different. And if for one side is difficult to who is foreigner understand this, for us it's very important to be different, because states are very, very different one by one for one. So I'm glad that the professor that teaches in Pernambuco don't follow the same things that professor that teaches in Recife, because there are structural problems that it's like in one stage or other, no, but cultural differences, very, very expressive, that change the way to manage curriculum. So the standardization is present, but the control is not so strong that does all teachers work in the same way.
Okay.
What could be considered a lack, but could be considered a gain.
Okay. Obviously, exist different approaches, different issues, and it would be nice to discuss, but our time is limited. Let's say at the end, can you name, for example, or can you mention some, at least three, the most important, most expressed challenges of Brazil education system? Some challenges at the moment,
That
at this
we
time.
need, or that
No.
was
What challenges
studied?
you experienced in Brazil education system? Some challenges or problems?
Some problems.
Yeah.
It's difficult to think.
A lot of challenges.
Yeah. Too many.
Too many challenges.
Yeah.
But at least name some of them. But based on your opinion, obviously.
I think
For example, please imagine that you are Minister of Education in Brazil.
too much headache. I think an important problem challenge is the payment for the work of the professors, the work of the
Teacher salary.
Teacher salary. Teachers have a very bad salary. So this goes to a lack of disposition, interest, dedication, and many teachers has two professions, two works: drive cars of transport and go and teaches in schools, or sell things, and I think it's very important.
Yeah, by the way, we discussed yesterday during our trip to Maragogi with colleagues, because we passed many different villages or small towns, and we discussed about teacher education shortly, and also we mentioned the same that for teachers, for example, it's difficult to reach some, let's say, bigger centers, to take part in seminars, in courses, for example, what is related with professional development, to raise their qualification, for example, or to receive some support, some methodological or some didactical support. And it's really difficult. First of all, that's again, it's a big country, so big distances among cities, for example, etc. And as you mentioned, also low salaries possible. And does this, just for interest, does salary depends, for example, on teacher qualification somehow or not?
The qualification changes so little, but it's a little difference. The number of hours that you were working with is the major difference. So if you are a teacher who is teaching for 16 hours
Per week.
Per week, yeah, or 20. These do a difference in your salary. But if you have a master's degree, if you have a doctoral degree, postdoctoral, no difference. A master's degree, you have an increment, but it's very few.
And just again, was the last, because you are involved in teacher education anyway, but I mean, with reservice teachers or future teachers, what about in-service teachers, for example, or the working teachers? Do you have some connections or somehow contacts, communicating with them, etc.?
Yeah, yes, we at the university we promote many courses for service teachers. We have contact. We like to be in contact with students that are pre-service and now are in-service teachers. And we can go to them and take some courses or workshop. And usually, mainly at the pandemic period, we work with them and the students of the university, joining in service and Pre-service and in
Pre-service
service.
teaching.
Yeah, it's very. It's a creative moment. It's a lot of ideas and help with one help another. It's great.
Yeah, but pandemic situation obviously it's not good. It was not good, and currently possibly it's not good situation because we receiving some information, some news that again some waves in some countries, in some regions. But anyway, some positive aspect in this technological development, some technological achievement, and for example, mainly having in mind Brazil as big country with long distances, etc., difficulty to reach, to access, for example, teachers. Technology can help possible to communicate online, for example, at distance, to give some support for them or to receive some feedback at the same time, etc. What do you think?
Yes. Professors and teachers and students, all of us, we learn with this process, with this crisis. But for teachers in schools, all of this was a very exhausting process because they have in a quick velocity learn about technology, do things with technology that
at the same time.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's not like in Brazil.
And take classes.
And approximately in all countries. You need to learn technology, how to apply it properly. At the same with students, with parents, and also at the same time to deliver lessons or lectures, for example, at the universities. Really, it was so complex. But somehow we adapted. We learned the lesson. Let's say. Okay, let's finish our communication on this positive note because it's really.
I'm a very positive person.
Yeah, I think so. It was really nice to communicate with you, Regina. As I mentioned again, just for interest, because Regina, its pronunciation in Lithuanian, it's typical also Lithuanian name, Regina or Regina in Brazil. Thank you very much for that you agreed to talk with me and to have this short interview on some general issues related to education. It's really interesting and somehow useful, and I wish you big success in your personal life, in your academic career, and possible we will find some possibilities in the future to communicate, to cooperate, possible in different projects or different research activities, which is really important. And possibly you want to say some words also for our channel viewers.
Hi everybody, let's believe in education.
Yeah, because education is really powerful. The question is how to decide on right direction, how to use this power. Because in positive way or, not in negative way, but real education is has so high power in the whole and can produce changes.
Yes, we have to work together.
Yeah. Thank you very much.